So I recently finished another playthrough of Dragon Age Inquisition, and with Trespasser it is very Elven lore heavy. So in today's video I'm going to be talking about things I'd like to see or learn more of in the next Dragon Age relating to the Elven Pantheon. First is Elganon and their involvement with the Dwarves. In Trespasser, when you venture through the deep roads, you can come across 3 codexes written by an elf who has turned to the Qun. The first codex talks about how there are Mythal and Fen'Harel statues down in the deep roads, questioning why that they're there, and that Fen'Harel looks to be in the spot of guarding Mythal. In the second codex, they talk about an old Dalish poem that seems to be talking about Mythal and the Dwarves and a connection between them. In the third codex, it talks about how come there are so many Evanuris statues down in the deep roads. Would the Dwarves be okay with this? And that they remember their Haren telling them about a tale where the Dwarves feared the sun and the sun possibly drove them underground. They question whether there was a war between the elves and the dwarves. So I'm curious as to what Elganon's involvement with the dwarves were. Were they more cruel and harsh and greedy towards the dwarves? Did maybe Mythal treat them more kindly? Did Mythal have a friendship with the dwarves? And that's why in the poem she calls them my little dwarves, seems to have a friendly relationship with them. Where Elganon seems to, in the stories, be very power hungry. Many people fear him, and that could be why the dwarves did not like Elganon. We know that the elves were underground mining lyrium. Did the Evanuris send the elves down there to mine lyrium, and maybe they got very sick from it? Maybe Elganon became very greedy and they wanted more and more from the dwarves. Did maybe Elganon want power over the dwarves, and that's why Mythal had to seal up the deep roads, or maybe persuade the dwarves to go underground to protect them from Elganon? Next is Mythal and the Titans. If you return to the deep roads when it is flooded, you will find a crack with a alluvion through it. You have to explode Gatlock to get through it, but once you walk through the mirror, you will find a mural of depicting Mythal defeating a Titan. You can also read a codex which explains that praising Mythal for defeating the Titan and saving the people. I don't know if they were talking about the elves. I don't know if this is the dwarves writing this in thanks to Mythal for defeating the Titan. Were the dwarves okay with Mythal destroying the Titan? The Titans seem to bring about destructions to Thedas. Are the dwarves okay with that? Do the dwarves want payback to Elganon and the other gods? Or maybe back then they were also on Mythal's side. Or maybe they weren't. Maybe Mythal thought she was protecting them and her people. It also says that they were sealing off where this Titan was so that the Evanuris could not find them. Because that would bring even more destruction to the elves, and that the Evanuris are very greedy and very power hungry, and already are treating their people very badly. So maybe it was Mythal and Fen'Harel that sealed this cavern and know about the Titans and what happened. The Titans in their song that the dwarves can hear, they seem very sad and maybe very vengeful. So I wonder if the Titans are to awake, are they going to want revenge against the elven gods? And what impact will that have for the dwarven people? In the Descent you see that Volta has like magic, so I wonder, in silencing the Titan, was that silencing the advancement of the dwarves maybe potentially having magic? Or maybe they used to have magic and that was all forgotten, maybe once they were pushed underground. Maybe that's what was taken away from them. Next I wanted to talk about Endril, because her story is very interesting with her venturing into the Void. The Void, it is said that that is where the Forgotten Ones are. It is said that the elves, maybe possibly Elganan, was unhappy with the Forgotten Ones and the disease and terror they brought to the elven people. Elganan may have banished them to the void, which could possibly be somewhere in the Fade. It could be the Black City. It is also where Solus banished the Forgotten Ones to the void, and then the Evanuris to the heavens, or to a different part of the Fade, I guess. But it is said that Endril hunted the Forgotten Ones in the void, and that ultimately drove her mad. She spent too much time there, and then when she came out to the elves, she brought some type of plague or disease to her people. I wonder if what Endril found in the void was the blight, and possibly maybe the Forgotten Ones creating the Darkspawn, maybe. Or maybe it could be connected to red lyrium, or maybe the Forgotten Ones creating corrupted red lyrium. Whatever it is, I'm curious to learn more about Endril and what she found in the void. And maybe that is the disease that she brought upon her people, maybe introducing that to Gillinan, possibly the other elven gods. But with Gillinan, she could have used this to corrupt her people and the beasts that she created. Talking about the Forgotten Ones, next I'm going to be talking about the old gods, which could possibly be the Forgotten Ones or the Forbidden Ones or the Evanuris, who knows. They all have a connection. But the old gods are the archdemons that create blights. There are apparently 2 left in Thedas. I'm very curious as to if the Forgotten Ones are the old gods. Are they the ones who created the blight? Are they the ones who created Darkspawn? Does this have a connection to Elganan? Or did they somehow corrupt or anger a titan and create red lyrium? Next, I wanted to talk about Gillinan and her creations. Gillinan was once a mortal and one of the people who was risen up by Endril to be a god. And we see in Tevinter Nights a maybe temple. We read about Ramesh finding paintings of elven priests and corrupted Hala and corrupted elves. I wonder if, as I mentioned before, Endril brought this corruption and maybe gave it to Gillinan to make her beasts more powerful. In the tales it says that Gillinan created beasts and then Endril asked to hunt them, or for Gillinan to destroy them all except for the monsters of the air and deep sea creatures and the Hala. I wonder if she didn't destroy them all and they are now sealed in these 11 other caves around Thedas. So I'm interested to learn more about Gillinan's creations. Why did she create them? Why did she corrupt? If she was someone who was so caring of the Hala and of her people, maybe her rise to power made her very greedy, and maybe she wanted more power and corrupted her own animals maybe. I wonder how Endril felt about that. Maybe Endril didn't like that. I'm interested to learn more about Gillinan and Endril, just because they both have sad kind of stories. Endril turning to madness and Gillinan possibly corrupting her own people and creatures. The same with Endril and the other elven gods. I wonder if they ever came to and realized what they were doing, and then maybe it was too late. I don't know, or maybe they didn't care. But that's something I'd like to learn more about. Next, I wanted to talk about Solus and Mythal. In the end credits of Dragon Age Inquisition, we see Solus and Mythal have like a friendly, very close relationship. Solus mentions that he has to save the people. Mythal calls him an old friend, and then Solus takes a power, maybe the old god's soul, or maybe Mythal put that through the mirror, the Illuvian, before Solus got to her. I wonder if Mythal has alternate plans to Solus's plans. I wonder if they're on the same side. Solus is going to bring down the veil, which will unleash the Evanuris. Is Mythal okay with that? Mythal obviously wants revenge of some kind. Is this to the Evanuris? Is she for Solus's plan? Is she on Solus's side? Maybe are they going to stand together? Mathal has been working throughout the decades plotting something really big. I wonder if it is just against the Evanuris, or maybe it's something else. I'm so excited to see. Lastly, I have mentioned this before, but what I would really like to see is a flashback of what it was like in the time of Arlathan. We have read some codexes of spirals and floating palaces, as we have seen in the Ver de Fara. It all looks very beautiful, but I would love to see what it was like in the time back then. What were all the Evanuris like? Were they always corrupted and greedy? I'd like to see how they acted, how Solus and Mathal acted, like some scenes between them back then. I'd love to see a scene of Solus bringing down the veil and the gods, their reactions to that. We know the Elven people were very hurt and shocked by it. So seeing what it was like in the time before, I think would be really cool, especially interactions between Solus and Mathal back then, and seeing what Solus was like back then is something I really want to see, because he talks about himself being very prideful and is it hot-blooded or something. So I'd love to see that Solus. He has a lot of history he talks about, and I'd love to see it in game. So happy Dragon Age Day, and thank you very much for watching the video.